In this video, I'm going to show you how to do a single sample t-test in Microsoft Excel using the data analysis add-in. There are a couple of workarounds we have to do, and so I'll walk you through all of that. So let's imagine that my question is about customer satisfaction, and I measure that on a 5-point scale, and so higher scores indicate greater customer satisfaction. And I'm hoping to show my boss that the average customer satisfaction is greater than 3. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about how to test this in a single sample t-test. So let's first think about what my hypotheses would be. So I'm going to have a null and an alternative. And again, this is a single sample t-test because I'm just comparing my test value to this hypothesized value of 3. So I could say that my null hypothesis, we're going to go ahead and just go through this in a couple steps. So my null always has the equal sign, so I can just start by thinking about, is the null 3? And then actually this is going to be a one-tailed test, and the reason I know that is because I have the signal word right here, greater. So I know I'm looking for one type of difference, so my alternative is going to be actually that my mean is greater than 3, that my scores are good. But right now that means I have a problem between my null and my alternative because they aren't covering all the bases. So instead of equal, I'm going to go ahead and delete that and fix my null hypothesis. And so I'm going to go ahead and say that it is less than or equal to as my null, because my test hypothesis value is that my mean is greater. Okay, so I've got my null and my alternative set up, and I need to set these up before I look at my data to keep me honest. Now let's think about what that would mean in terms of my regions of rejection. So I've gone ahead and drawn a very ugly distribution. So pretend that's a normal distribution, and I could think about this red shaded area over here. That's what maps onto my alternative hypothesis. That would be the area where I have a sample mean that's so big that it would have been implausible to have come from a mean with from a distribution with a mean of 3. So if I get a big sample mean over here, that's when I would reject the null. My decision's always about the null hypothesis. So now that I have my research question set up, I know my hypotheses, let's move over into Excel, and then we'll go ahead and test this hypothesis. So I'll be using my data analysis add-in, and I've talked about how to activate that in earlier videos. But unfortunately, the data analysis add-in doesn't have a single sample t-test. So we're going to do a workaround in which we're going to use a paired samples t-test to go ahead and test my value. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is create a column that has my hypothesized test value. So I'm just going to call that hype value for hypothesized value, and that's the value that I wrote in my hypothesis of 3, because that's what I'm testing my customer satisfaction scores against. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill that down so that for each observation that I have a 3 corresponding to it. And that way I'll be able to test column A, customer satisfaction scores, against column B, my hypothesized value, and that will get me a single sample t-test. But again, I'll have to do it in a paired samples approach in Excel. If you're using SPSS, SAS, or other specialties software, you won't have to do this workaround. But again, the data analysis comes with PC versions of Excel. So I'll go ahead and click Data Analysis. And then as I'm scrolling down, I'm going to do t-test paired 2 samples for means. And again, that's going to be my workaround for a single sample t-test. I'll click OK. Clear that out. And I'll go ahead in my first variable range. I start with my label, and I'm going to highlight my satisfaction scores. So for me, that goes from A1 to A34. And then in variable 2 range, I start at B1, go down to B34. I'm going to leave hypothesized mean difference blank. I tell it I have labels, so always give a label and always include it. It'll make your output much nicer. Once I have that, I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I get my computer output. I'm going to make that a little bigger and clean it up just a little bit. Now when I do this workaround, these hypothesized value The descriptive statistics aren't meaningful, nor is the Pearson correlation. But I can look here and see that my sample mean was 3.26. You can see the variance that I had 33 observations, my degrees of freedom, and then over here I can see that my t-statistic is 1.8. And I interpret that pretty much like a z-score, especially with the relatively large sample size of 32. Now this was a one-tailed test, so I'm going to be looking at this p-value right here for the probability of a one-tailed. But there's one other thing I still need to do when I'm doing Excel, because I haven't told it if my one-tailed test was for a left tail or a right tail test. And I'll go ahead and walk you through that in another video.